Welcome to her comeback. I'm so glad you're back with me. This is where 50 isn't your finish line. It is your starting point, the starting point of everything you want your life to be, the person that you are meant to be. I'm your host, Michelle Thompson, and we are proving that your best chapter may just be the one you haven't written yet. This podcast will show you how other women have made their comeback and how you can too. Welcome back. Welcome, everyone, to her comeback. I'm your host, Michelle Thompson, and I am so happy today to have Stephanie Georges with us. She is just a real powerhouse. She's a former C-suite executive and top-ranked Wall Street analyst who has led strategy, product development, brand, and transformation across industries. And she brings a deep expertise in aligning purpose with action and how to apply that lens in building systems that support women dignity, autonomy, and intentional choice. So I'm really glad to have her today. Stephanie, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Well, it sounds so good when you describe it. I appreciate that. I guess the only thing I would add is about 2 years ago, after this long career in corporate roles, I did this major pivot. So a lot of that change is it's really fresh and really interesting, exciting. I also am the mother of 3 now adult children. And I grew up I guess the only thing I would add is I was first generation Greek American, grew up in Brooklyn before anybody wanted to live in Brooklyn, and made my way to Colorado and New York, and that's where I am today. So that's
wonderful. I'm so glad to have you here. So let's go ahead and jump in. I have a few questions for the audience and myself to learn more about. So as I mentioned in the introduction, you went from being a top-ranked Wall Street analyst and C-suite executive to now the co-founder of a purpose-driven platform. So what was the moment when you realized the path you were on just didn't fit anymore?
That's a great place to start, and it's a really good question. And the reality is, I don't know that there was one moment. It was like the accumulation of moments. I started to realize in my roles, which I loved, every role I've had, and like every role, there are good days and bad days, but generally I felt really privileged to be able to be in these sort of roles where I could be making decisions and changing things. But at some point, it started to lack the joy. And I know that's a kind of a soft word, but it started to lack the joy, and it started to become on autopilot. And I think if I were to say there were one moment, one of the biggest moments for me was sitting in a conference room, being, as I was in many cases, the only woman in the room, and feeling like I was just an observer. And not that I wasn't invited into the conversation, but it just felt that I wasn't really inspired by what we were doing. And that started to get me to think about, how do I do something that really matters to me as opposed to matters to everybody else around me?
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I love that. From what you were describing, it sounds like it was a series of events that just became a longer process. But can you tell us any more about that decision?
Oh
It's
my
like,
gosh.
okay, yeah.
Michelle, it's almost embarrassing because I have to say, I would have the opportunity to shift my job or my career or the role that I was playing because either our company was merged or acquired. So there was a series of times where I would keep going back to the same role in a different company. And it was my comfort zone. It was what I did. And each time I did that, it felt a little bit less exciting. And it felt, okay, I've been here and done that. And not in a way that's diminishing the meaning and the purpose of that entity. It was just, I was sort of on repeat. But what was hard was to let go of that, to let go of the comfort of just being in a place where you could do you could play your role, you could do the work that you were doing. You did nothing I felt ashamed or embarrassed of, but it wasn't with the energy and excitement. And so I think if I hadn't have, so the last role that I had, I basically gave myself a deadline and I said, I need to be done and out by this date. And it was a year before that date. And I started to put the pieces in place. And not that it was this intricate plan. I,
Right.
I don't, it was more that I needed sort of a deadline for myself because I knew that I would keep moving the goalposts if I didn't have a deadline. So part of that was I actually told my boss, the CEO of that company, I said, look, I'm looking to make a change. It's going to be a year out. And that allowed them to think about how we could do that. And it forced me into not reneging on my own commitment to myself. So
Yeah. It's scary stuff to
very
leave the
scary.
comfort of corporate benefits and a steady paycheck. And I can identify with that. It's hard stuff to do.
It's a leap. It's a leap. And there's so many reasons why not to do it, but every day when I felt like I was going in, and I think part of it was I'm in my 60s, and part of it was saying, wow, you know what? I don't know how many more years I'm going to do this, and do I really want this part of my life to be do I want it to be something that matters to me? Do I want it to be something that brings me joy? Do I want it to be something that I can pour my whole self into? And it's easy to convince yourself that you're doing that in your day to day. But when I sort of held up the mirror and said, not quite, that's when I think I felt I had to make a change. So it's a leap. It's a leap.
Yeah, I can really identify with your story there. It's so true. With my job, when it came time to make that change, it's just, this isn't the space I'm supposed to be in. And I had to go and deeper into my own self to say, what's going to bring me that fulfillment and joy that you're talking about. So really can identify with that.
I want to just pick up on what you said because I appreciate that. And I think that's a nuance that I don't think I articulated as well as you did, which is I also think women in particular, whether you've had a family or not, or whether you've been a caregiver or not, or whether you've had a career or not, I do think women experience these transitions differently than men because our bodies and our physiology is rooted in our role as women. And I don't mean to say that as a way that says women are less than. It's just we're different than men. And I think what I've
Definitely.
been finding in the work that I've been doing, and that's why we've been committed to women in particular, is not that women are better or worse. It's just that we experience these shifts in life and the search for meaning more just differently. Our physiology, our hormones, the
Yes.
science of way we operate is just different. So it's just more visceral the way you described it.
Yeah. Was there something that you had to unlearn from your corporate identity as you now in this space today, rooted in dignity? It's outside of the corporate performance metrics.
Yeah.
What does that look like?
I think for me, it's just not settling. And I think in a lot of ways, women are marginalized and diminished in organizations, and perhaps not intentionally, perhaps it's just structurally the way things are. But one of the things I had to unlearn and really sort of reset my boundaries was I'm not going to work with anyone that I don't really feel honors me and honors my dignity and that I can reciprocate that. And I think that was a big shift for me because I think there was this, well, it's not that bad. Oh, they didn't really mean that, or I didn't get included because of this, or so you can sort of justify. I think that for me, one of the things I had to unlearn was setting that boundary for myself and
Yes.
giving myself the permission to just, I don't, no one on my team is anyone that's going to marginalize anyone else. No one on my team. And we're going to all have bad days and we're all going to have struggles and we're going to have
Yeah.
tensions. But at the end of the day, I felt like I want to build a culture and a community around me that honors people.
That's so huge and so important. And I can just so identify with everything you were saying there. Because I can myself in a place where my voice, like no one heard me. I was just completely felt invisible. And I'm like, what is going on here? So I really identify with what you're saying there. I love that.
I know
Um,
I was in New York City walking down the street the other day and someone walked by me and bumped my shoulder and it's crowded in New York City, but I just was like, you know what? I'm going to just stand my ground and I'm not going to be unseen anymore. And I think you're right. I think there's this invisibility that becomes hard to really accept in some ways. And
yes,
how do you reframe that for yourself?
absolutely. Tell us about Meraki. Meraki is a beautiful Greek concept. Can you walk us through what that means to you personally
Yeah.
and how a woman in the middle of a chaotic life transition can even begin to access that?
Yeah. Meraki is, as I had mentioned earlier, my background is Greek and my mom immigrated from Greece and she was the first person to model Meraki. And it's a Greek word that doesn't really translate well.
Okay.
And but it essentially it's that like that overwhelming feeling of when you can just pour your whole soul into something. You pour your whole self into something, you immerse yourself. It's more than flow, but that's a related feeling where things just feel frictionless. And you can do that. And it could be anything. It could be gardening, it could be needle pointing, it could be your career, it could be raising your children. There's no judgment in what Meraki is. It's just this undefinable feeling that washes over you when you immerse yourself into something with creativity, soul, and love. And I first witnessed it as a child when my mom, who didn't really, she was educated, but she came here and Greek was her first language. So she would, painting was something that she did. And she would just paint in the basement and she would like, there would be the record player on that just shows you how old I am, but the record player would be
Yeah.
on and I'd come home from school and she would be in a zone painting. And that
Yeah.
was her Meraki. So that's
Beautiful.
and
Beautiful.
to your question of how you do you find it, the real unlock for us was when we started on this project and thinking about how do we find our Meraki. It's really closely correlated to the ability to make an intentional choice, not just a choice, but the ability to make an intentional choice for your future, for a future that you want, and whatever that looks like. So the first step is
Mhm.
literally being able to take the first next step.
Yes.
And I think that's where we all get paralyzed. We something happens, we decide our job isn't bringing us joy, we have a caregiving event, something happens financially, we go through a divorce, something happens, and we are in this moment of what is my first next step? And I don't really feel like I have choices. And so the way we think about it or simplify it is how can you get clarity? That's the first step. It's a noisy world out there. How can a woman or an individual find clarity around this moment? And
Yes.
once you have clarity, then you can start having confidence. I understand what my options are. I now know what to ask my financial planner. I now know what to ask my doctor. I now know how to start thinking about caregiving for my aging parent. And once you have confidence, that's the path to agency, and agency opens up the ability to make intentional choice. I know that's a lot of words, but
Yes.
that's the theory behind and how we think about the platform. How do we give women, how do we start with that first step, just getting clear
Mhm.
so that you can now have
Just
confidence? Yeah.
yeah, I love what you described there. But with getting clarity, I think that definitely can be the hardest part because I know for me, so many things in life going on and it's all swirling in my head. And I'm like, what? I don't even know where to begin. Personally, I find that I get a lot of help through journaling, like writing it down, getting it out of my head. Is there something that you find that's helpful for you when you're trying to find that clarity?
Absolutely. For me, it's peer to peer. So
Okay.
engaging with other women who have been in a similar situation that I have. So I find the ability to say, I'm not alone in this. is a
Yes.
real opportunity to get clarity. And it may not be that they give me the answer or the actual path, but there's some feeling of I'm not in this alone, that someone else has been through this path that starts me to feel like, okay, I can take that step. So journaling isn't, I think that's another form of getting a feeling out that sort of suggests you're not alone.
Yeah, connection is so important in today's world. So, for that woman who spent years building a life around everybody else's needs, whether it's children, a spouse, a partner, other family members, how does she start distinguishing her own values from the expectations of all these other people?
Yeah, that's a big question. And I think that's an important question. And I love that you use the word values because at the end of the day, that's where you can ground yourself. What is it that's important to me? And back to the definition of Meraki, understanding what that is for yourself. Is it that I need community? Is it that I need to be respected? What are those values that are really important to me? And how do I ground myself in that? So I think that is whether it's and that's some of what our platform is designed to do, not to get into the mechanics of the platform, is to give you that quiet space to identify and really articulate for yourself through a series of questions. What is it that grounds me? What are my values? What is it that lights me up in terms of makes it really important? And to your point as well, like when you've been in a noisy world or you've been serving everyone else, it takes some time and some space to identify that. And the other thing is that technology is really working against us because if you think about it, most technology is, rather than giving us time and space, is asking us to do things faster and
Mm.
click these boxes. And so really creating a platform that opens up space for women to ground themselves in what is it that is central to them is part of that process.
Great. Now, so with your platform, you have an opportunity there where you see a lot of data. So, what has your early data revealed that has genuinely surprised you about where women feel the most lost or the most unsupported?
It's really interesting. First of all, so great question as well. But I will say one of the things we found was that women started to come on our platform. So we were in an early alpha. Now we're moving to a beta in June. But the what we saw, what was happening was, first of all, women were coming onto the platform and they were getting on and then they were jumping off. And it's all anonymized. So we didn't know who it was. And of course, my heart sank. Michelle, I was like, oh my God, what a failure. And then what was happening was they were, to my point earlier, realizing that the expectation that they had of themselves was, I'm going to go to this place and it's going to give me answers right away. And what they would do is close out and then come back and say, I need to carve out time. So that was one finding, that we're wired to use technology to give us quick answers. And that there was this yearning. And one of the most common pieces of feedback was, thank you for giving me the space that I haven't been able to give myself. What a gift. So women came back and they would devote themselves. And on average, women were spending 15 minutes, 12 minutes. Some women spend 20 minutes. And that gets to the second finding we found, which was generally, we thought most women would come in thinking about a health transition, like something happened around their health. That was just our theory.
Mhm.
It was initially women came in and started to come in around career or work. Something's going on at work, but roughly 40%, it was like 38% of the women who stayed on more than 15 minutes, the longer, so those 38% of the women that stayed on longer, they moved from career to finance to relationships. And that was the gold. We found that ultimately, when women felt that they were in a safer space, that they could trust the platform, at the core was, I need community. I'm looking for, how do I reinvent my friendships? Or if I leave work, I won't have anybody to talk to. Or I don't have my parents, I can't talk to them anymore because they're Alzheimer's. It was all
Right.
about community. So
Wow.
That was an aha. So there's this, I think
Yeah.
society tells us to start by talking about career and work. But when
Mhm.
you really step back to your point about journaling, it was a journaling exercise. They were
Yeah.
engaging, women were engaging, and it got to a place where they felt safe talking about the community that they were seeking.
So, what do you think makes your platform different than there's other coaching platforms and different tools that are online. You can find a little bit of everything out there. So, what would you say distinguishes yours?
We're solely focused on personalized. We think women deserve personalized
Mhm.
whole health support. Because we have AI at the core, AI isn't the end, but it's allowing us to get resources and tools and community that speaks specifically to what you need in that moment. So, right now, most platforms, if you go on, they have an arsenal of resources that are very curated, but not curated to where you are. So, we can using AI and the power of our platform, we can connect you to the resources that you need that are consistent with what part of your life you're struggling with or challenged with or where your transition is. And then we can provide a whole view, not just health, not just finance, not just relationships, not just work. We can give you a whole view of where you are. So that's one. No one else is doing that. Most of what people are doing is thinking about holistic in one category. So here's everything that you know about finance or everything you know about health. That's first. And it's very personalized. Second thing that we do is no one is bringing intelligence, which is the resources and AI, and combining it with community. So you come to our platform, and not only the resources don't only come in the form of articles or podcasts or coaching or tangible resources. They also come in the form of community resources, peers. You can be connected to women and groups of women that are in the same place or have traveled where you're traveling.
Oh, that's awesome. I wanted to go back to something you said earlier when you mentioned agency, and I think you talk about that a bit. Can we just talk about what does real agency look like for a woman who feels so structurally contained by her finances or her family or age? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, agency is a big word and it can feel like it has to be everything. But and this is my view, I think agency can start with just a small thing, right? That I have the ability to make a choice in something. It could be something. And that becomes a practice, right? So if I feel that if I can start with something small, like I'm going to make a choice that I'm going to exercise today, or I'm going to make a choice that, and it doesn't have to be big, and it may be, because I think it becomes daunting if it becomes this, I'm going to leave my career and all the implications. But if you can start with, okay, I'm going to get clear about what my values are. I'm going to understand that. I'm going to have the confidence around what that means for me. And then I'm going to make a small choice. That agency is contagious, in my opinion. You start to feel like if I can do that, then I can take the next step and the next step and the next step. And I think that's where people get hung up, or I know I got hung up, which was I can't leave my career. I can't leave the work that I'm doing. There's just too many obstacles. But if I said, well, I can talk to my boss about it and take one step, and then I can take the next step and then the next step. It's a Agency doesn't happen all at once.
Yeah. I love how you describe that. And that is so true because I know, and for me, I'm a very all or nothing type person. I'm either all in or I'm not at all. So it can be really hard for me at times because how can I just go and take this huge leap and do this? And it's really not about taking the huge leap. It's exactly what you described. It's taking that small step, whatever that looks like. And then those steps begin to like build on each other, kind of compound, like
Mhm.
that you take another, then another, and it creates energy and motion in that direction.
Completely agree. And I think the ability to navigate a setback is a lot easier when you have when you have a series of experiences that show you that you can actually make those choices. So you can look at it as a small setback as opposed to just paralyzing, right? So
Yes,
that's a
that's right.
big part. It's okay, you're almost training yourself to say, I'm learning how to build a reserve for myself for when that rainy day comes that I'm going to hit a bump. So I don't want to suggest that agency and the ability to make the intentional choice and finding your Meraki is going to happen in a minute or in the first
Mhm.
thing you do, but little steps allow you to build a reserve for those setbacks that you're going to inevitably have.
That's right. That's so true. As you're working with women and on your platform, there's this fine line between supporting women and then subtly telling them they need to be fixed. So, how do you hold that line of managing that?
I think that's part of what we do. That's a really fine line and it is a balance. It's really interesting because what we found is some women just want to be told. Right.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting. And so we've had women come on our platform and get impatient. Just give me the answer.
Just tell
And
me.
and then there are some women who are like, I'm just browsing. I don't know if you've ever gone to a store and then the person comes up to you and they're like, oh, let me help you. Do you want to buy something? Let me help you. And I'm like, oh no, I'm just browsing. I don't want to be coaxed into anything. I'm not ready. So part of what our platform does and what AI enables us to do is to determine that, is to allow you to help us understand that right out and from the beginning. And Sophie, our guide, she then can curate what you get served up in terms of
Okay.
resources and community with that in mind. So I'm not here to say you're wrong for wanting it. And we're not here to provide you the answer because there is no answer. But if you want resources that allow you to have an actionable decision,
Mhm.
Sophie will curate and personalize what she offers you and how she curates that information based on where you are in the decision-making process. Whereas if you're just, like I said, if you're just browsing and you're just trying to figure out, she'll reorient what she serves you and what she offers you and how she engages with you in a way that is personalized to what you need. So that's how we've been able to use AI and its power, flip it on its head rather than
Yes.
it telling you what to do. You allow it to do what you want it to do.
Yeah, that's really amazing. AI in so many ways amazes me. And I love how you've harnessed that in this platform. And it's really awesome. What do you wish someone had said to you during your own hardest transition that nobody did? Can you think of something?
Yeah, you know what? It
What's
does
that?
just doing something. I don't want to, like the motion, the movement is more important than the actual choice. I think
Ah,
we get so bogged. I know for myself, you get so bogged up in there's a right choice and a wrong choice. And I think particularly my younger self, and I see this, I have a daughter who's 29, and I can see that in she's, oh my God, I don't want to do this because then I'm going to close all these doors. But just making a choice and not making a choice is a choice is the important thing, not the actual choice, because ultimately the path is yours to forge. And I guess that's what I would say, because I think a lot of times in my past, my younger self, probably, I know, like I had an opportunity to live abroad at one point in my career, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's going to change my whole, I can't do that. And not that I regret that I didn't, but I regret that I didn't consider it in a way that said, it really doesn't matter which path you take. It's just doing something and
yes.
moving.
Oh, that's interesting you said that because that's something that I tell myself too. I wish that maybe that whole thing with living abroad or just going and taking a class abroad, a semester abroad, I never was open to that in my younger self. And
Yes.
then I'm like, today, I'm like, why didn't I do that? You know, it's
But no
interesting you
regrets.
said
We can't
that.
have
That's
regrets.
right. That's right. It was all part of the path that we're on and we all evolve and it takes what it takes with all of us. Is there one thing most women get wrong about reinvention that you want to correct right now?
I wouldn't say women get anything wrong. I think that maybe the word reinvention itself, like I think realizing that what you are and what you've done shouldn't be thrown away. So sometimes maybe it's just what reinvention implies, which is I have to start over. What I've been so excited about in making this shift and transition in my own life is I find these odd things that I learned early in my career, or just even processes or how I do things or behaviors that I appreciate, they come handy. They all have a place, even though what I'm doing is completely unrecognizable relative to what I was doing. I can't even recognize my old career in what I'm doing. I think there's this idea that you have to throw it all away and start from a clean slate, and that becomes overwhelming. So maybe it's just the fact that we keep using the word reinvention. And not that it's a wrong word, but it has this, it implies that you have to undo something rather than build on. And it's amazing wisdom. We have so much wisdom that we can contribute.
Yeah, I love that. I love the way you describe that. It's so true. It's about taking everything that we've learned to this point and using that just in a new space, in a new way that feels good to us and feels right in the direction we want to go.
Even the tough stuff, even the stuff that didn't work out. I'm divorced. That was really, really hard. And I could look at that and say, oh, that was a failure. I don't want to carry anything. I learned a lot. I learned how to stand up for myself. I learned a lot about lawyers, learned a lot about negotiating, and I made a lot of mistakes that I'm not ever going to make again, or I hope I don't. So even in the so-called failures, I don't even want to call them that, even in the things that look like stumbles or you like cringe, there's
we learn. We learn from those things. Yeah. And I totally, 100%, I can see that in my life. Everything that has happened that could be labeled a failure, things went wrong, that kind of thing. I have learned so much in those spaces. And it goes to the person that I am today because I have those experiences, important stuff, good stuff there. So if the ladies in our audience want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Well, they should definitely reach out directly. We have a website, and it's called MerakiDignity.com. Meraki, Meraki, dignity, the way it's spelled, .com. And there's a lot of resources on there, but what I could say is if you're interested in playing with our platform or engaging with it, it's still in its early stages, but there's a place you can go and click through and play with it, engage with it, give us feedback, tell us you love it, tell us what you would wish it did, because we want it. One of our values is interdependence and co-collaboration. We want to build this not as our little brainchild, but to really serve women. So MerakiDignity.com, and we have a Substack, which is Meraki Dignity on Substack. So that's how you can find us and get in the conversation.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I truly just enjoyed our conversation. Some really great stuff I think we talked about. And I wish you continued success in this space and all the best with the platform. I'm going to have to go and check it out myself. I want to read some more and look at some more things there.
That's awesome, Michelle. Thank you. And maybe we can meet again once it's up and running in the real pilot in a few months.
I would love that. Yes, definitely. We'll keep in touch.
Thanks.
Thanks so much for joining me today on Her Comeback. I hope this conversation inspired you to keep moving forward no matter where you are in your own journey. If you love this episode, I'd be so grateful if you would subscribe to the show on my YouTube channel, Michelle Thompson Life Coaching. Go there for more encouragement, insights, and just real talk about making a comeback happen. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss new content. You can also visit hercomebackpodcast.com for notes, resources, connect with me, connect with other women in our amazing community who are rewriting their stories. Remember, your setback isn't your final chapter. It's just the setup for your greatest comeback yet. I'll see you next time. Until then.